Hello out there. We're on the air. Today we have Jaw from 88 Sats Radio. So that was my best impression of him. So go check out his channel, guys. But yeah, welcome to the show, man. I'm excited to do this round 2.
That was pretty good. You seem pretty excited for 4:30 in the morning.
Yeah, I think my wife's trying to sleep right now, but she'll have to listen to me saying hello out there. So I feel bad. I feel bad for her.
Hey, you did pretty well.
Yeah,
But
cheers.
I've noticed so far in our short little chat here that you've also improved your internet since our first chat. I think you were at about 3 different locations in an hour during that one. So you're
I
moving up.
I literally ran from my bedroom up to my dad's office from work, like mid-session, grabbing my laptops, grabbing my headphones, and being like, "He's not going to call back." It's just so funny because now it's like it's just not a big deal. But
That was your first one, right?
yeah, that was your first, and then tried to get 30 minutes with Pomp, and then I disappeared from YouTube for like 8 months, and now I'm back. So now I'm nice and settled. So we'll see how we go.
Call that the pomp effect.
Yeah. I just wanted to kick off with some questions about your own personal channel because, yeah, last time we had a conversation, I'd say we were trying to figure it out, but maybe 7, 8 months ago, whatever it was, and you had like less than 4,000 subscribers. Not that we go subscribers as growth on YouTube, but to see 12,000 people subscribe to you now and in such a short period of time, that boom of growth, what does that show you? Where do you think those numbers should be in interest? And where do you think all this is headed? Like, is YouTube something you're keen on, or is it something that you're just trying to get a voice? Like, what is now that your channel's this big, what is its purpose?
Wow, that's something I haven't thought too hard about. But the channel started November 2021. No, sorry, 2023. And it started basically with a need for wanting to talk to people who are getting into Bitcoin and knew nothing about Bitcoin, because I'd seen people getting scammed, people getting rugged on different platforms, and so I really just wanted to have like 10 or 15 minute chat every morning, to help people, anybody who would care to listen to me. Just watch out for these things. This is how to be a little bit more secure, a little more private. I did it super early for me because I didn't want anybody to show up in the live chat. But then a couple of people rolled in, and then a couple more people, and then it turned into something. And the channel's had good growth, but what I'm most proud about, honestly, is our community that we built. And there's been the Living the Future community. I think there's 130 people in there from across the world in a group chat, which is kind of crazy when you really think about it. It just kind of seems normal because it happens so slowly. But yeah, that community has just like blown me away in terms of what my vision of it was versus what it's turned into. And it's great to just be able to talk to Bitcoiners, about what's going on every day, ask questions, help, and you kind of learn by helping other people too. But also just like what's been built in there. Like there's been several different YouTube channels launched since the Living in the Future because there's so much support in there from people. Um, but also the business, like our new venture, Bitcoin Citadel. All 7 members are from the Living in the Future community. So you put Bitcoiners together, and they're going to build something pretty special, I think. So the growth itself, I'm very proud of and happy with. I kind of mentioned to you before that I think it should be 5 million people, though. It shouldn't be 12,000. It should be 5 million, because this is the thing that everybody should be talking about, and everybody should be learning about. And it's the only thing that really matters, I think, in terms of investing in assets. Um, and it just blows me away that so many people are still missing out on this and ignoring it. But, I shared a quote on the Maple Bitcoin stream on Friday that was from Ayn Rand. And it was, you can avoid reality, but you cannot avoid the consequences of avoiding reality. So we're kind of moving into a time where the average person is getting left behind a little bit, which is sad to see. But you and I both are doing our best to get as many people here as we can.
What I find strange is like Bitcoin's still a niche, and it's like, how is this a niche, man? Like $2 trillion asset, 100,000 US dollar Bitcoin, 16 years of consistent growth, and it's like, how are we still considered a niche on YouTube? How is this not blowing up? How is this not what everyone's talking about? Like, we have some of the biggest people in the world, Donald Trump, even Mark Cuban, things like that. These big big known, well-known figures, popular people talking about Bitcoin, and then you've got us, and then it's like, how are we still at 3% global adoption? Like, shouldn't we be at 66%? And so, do you think we're headed to this world where sort of Bitcoin is a part of the internet, tethered to the internet, so therefore its global adoption will go from 3% to 66% in less than 30 years, like what the internet did? Do you think that's possible?
Absolutely. It's coming. And that's a hard part for people, is that it's coming whether they like it or not, whether they believe in it or not. It's coming. And the longer that people wait to learn about Bitcoin and just get some exposure to it, the less they're going to end up with. That's the reality. There's no way around that. um, and I think that it's going to be a little bit more forced. Right now, you can still voluntarily enter into this industry and into this asset class. But I think the real catalyst for Bitcoin adoption is going to be business owners. When business owners have a unique product or service that they sell to people, and they realize that the fiat dollars aren't worth anything, and they're getting less and less valuable every single day, and they want Bitcoin. It's going to start with businesses adopting Bitcoin kind of like as a marketing play, like we saw with Steak and Shake. Just kind of like, to be the first ones, kind of like strategy within the Bitcoin treasury world. There's going to be a couple companies that do it. It's going to catch some steam, but then we're going to get to a point where businesses are going to demand Bitcoin. And at that point, if you're interested in shopping with a business, whatever, if it's a product or a service, and you have to pay in Bitcoin, you're essentially going to be forced into it at that time. And, when that comes, right now you can get 1,000 sats for $1. You might be able to get 100 sats for $1 or less. So it's just, again, you can wait as long as you want, but it's similar to anything in life. The longer you wait, the more painful it gets. It could be with Bitcoin. It could be with avoiding something that's medically wrong with you, or a bill that's been outstanding. The longer you wait, the more painful it gets. So that's kind of where we are today.
Yeah, I think it's going the similar direction as AI, maybe even earlier, because AI is swept in a lot faster with global adoption. But that's becoming a factor of being forced because people are moving out of their jobs now. People that aren't using it are getting replaced. And so, even the other day at my job, I was helping with some stock take or something. And I started to use AI, and I was just plugging in part numbers for each thing that we had in our stock for the business. And and I showed the accountant or manager that we have there, and she's like, "I have never even used AI." And then I was just thinking, "Sheesh!" Like, I'm just like, "This is probably what's going to happen, though." Like, there's a very big age gap between me and her, and it's going to be interesting to see how things play out. And so AI has been that mass global adoption off the get go, but I think Bitcoin will go a similar way, where it's like, "Oh, I've never even used Bitcoin. I've never even held Bitcoin, but." Now it's on my phone. Now it's a wallet automatically. Like, can you explain this to me? Like, how come when I go to the grocery store, there's a huge discount using Bitcoin? Or, there's going to be things that are in your face that it's just like, oh, maybe I should have got some earlier and actually reap the benefits of being an early investor or early holder. Someone that's adopting Bitcoin, not only as an investment, but as a savings account. Sort of just to bounce back where we're going from there, now that we've come this far, even your channels, your communities, things that are starting to progress, build things, all these community-based projects. Do you think Jaw from like 5 years ago, if you told him what his life went from being like an accountant and basically that whole world, and suddenly now this whole world where it's like your whole job is like you're running this golf business, then you're running this Bitcoin channel, you're running these communities, there's subscriptions and stuff along the way as well. So there's like these side incomes that you didn't even know were possible. Do you think like that 5 years ago, Jaw would be super, super proud, or would he be like, what is going on? Like, it just seems like a lot.
Oh, Jor from 5 years ago would be over the moon, absolutely over the moon. And sometimes I have to remind myself of that. I get caught up in the day to day, worrying about something went wrong. I missed an order I was a couple days late for, or, I took a couple days to get back to somebody that I should have got back to before. It's a lot. It's been a lot of work. It hasn't been easy. Thankfully, I have a very good support staff here, which is, at the house here, and my family overall. Arnie's usually sitting there. He's not there right now, but No, it's pretty crazy to think about. And I think that the one thing that I've kind of taken away from the whole thing so far is just the world that we're moving into is a lot different than the world that we came from. And I think there's going to be a lot of people that get left behind who are still working a not necessarily working a job, but I think people are going to see how powerful the internet is combined with Bitcoin and AI, and the ability to actually leverage your time and earn a living off of that versus like showing up to a job. And you know, I've kind of known this for a while that you're never going to get real wealthy by going and getting paid by the hour. Even if you talk to a doctor, like I met with several doctors in the last couple months, and they're struggling. They make $1 million a year, and they're struggling because every time they get a pay increase, they bump up their living standards, they upgrade their lifestyle, and so they're always just kind of still trying to get ahead of where they were before. And in that life, like I was a CPA before, so I was in that. I was getting paid a salary, and you never get really wealthy from that. You can have a pretty good life, but you're always going to be continuously chasing on the hamster wheel there. It's not until you actually use your creativity and you build things that you can leverage, where you might take an hour to make a video, and that video might actually play for the next 10 years. And in 10 years from now, you still might be getting some residual income from that. That's the kind of things I think that actually build wealth. And that's the kind of stuff that I've been focused on the last couple of years. And it's very hard to get started in that world. But once you're kind of, at a certain point, it almost seems like you can't stop it. It's kind of weird. Like when you're first getting into it, it seems like no matter what you do, no matter how much value that you add to the world, you don't get anything in return for it. But then you get to a certain point where you've done the work and it's out there and people are learning from it and valuing it. And then it seems like you can't stop it. Like in terms of, unless I did something really crazy in my life right now, it would be very hard to stop the different income streams that I've built so far over these last couple of years. And that's exactly what I was hoping to do. I just didn't know what the path was. It was just kind of it's all kind of uncharted territories, and it's good to have some friends and stuff that you can talk to about it and support. But at the same time, you just got to try stuff, and eventually, after putting your head down and just doing it for long enough, that's kind of where you get to. So to answer the question, Jor from 5 years ago would be proud.
Yeah, I work a wagey job, a salary job, and my dream would always be to get away from that. I think everyone's dream is, but taking that leap of faith and actually stepping out and doing it is a whole nother thing. Um, I talk to my dad, and he always talks about, because it's his business and things, and so I want to help out. Like that's the only reason I'm there. Otherwise, I'd probably have quit by now. And I have it. Yeah, I've got these two visions. I've got one vision where it's like I stay with my dad, and I start building up the company more and trying to help out, manage things and run things, and maybe that's my long-term career. And then there's this other side where it's like, what about in a vision where dad ends up selling this company? He's going into his 60s. Maybe this isn't my career. And for some weird reason, I have no fear about it. It's like, I think old Joey without Bitcoin and things like that, I would have so much fear. I would be like, oh, this was my plan A, plan B, plan C. I'm screwed. And now I'm like, nah, I reckon with the knowledge I have in Bitcoin, my passion about Bitcoin, my interest in helping people, I think there's a space right now, like what we were talking about with global adoption, that organically something would just build from the ground up if I'm willing to put the time, the energy in. And so I just say to dad, I'm like, hey, if someone walked in tomorrow and offered you this sum for your company, like call it a day, man. You've done your work. It's time to retire. Like, don't ever try and keep going just for me, because I know my future's okay and safe, and there's gonna be a bumpy road and risks to take. But I think knowing that I'm saving in the best money actually helps, and believing that even one day I'll be paid in that money just from other people that believe what I have to say or do is valuable. And so even small things, like in a group chat recently, I was with Bitcoin group chat. One of the guys is like, hey, I applied at Swan Bitcoin because it's double my salary, this position, and I'm going for it. And I'm just thinking, there's a chance he gets it. And it's like crazy good money. And I'm just thinking that's purely just because he has the passion about Bitcoin. It's a Bitcoin company. And I was just thinking something like that temporarily, if I didn't want to go fully self sovereign, then I could pick up something like that if I was lucky. So I don't know. Bitcoin's crazy, man. Like, it's not just the money and everything. It really does give you a hope for the future, especially for young people. Um, and speaking of trying to compare this old system where, you could say that you used to be a part of, what is this old system is built around fiat, but it's also built around real estate and gold and all these typical investments. But I really like your take on real estate specifically. So you mentioned, yes, it is a necessity to have a shelter over your head, but then you also go down this rabbit hole of, well, what about the property tax? What about the maintenance of the house? Can you sort of go into, however you want, breaking down what real estate should be, like what houses should be, what it has become, and then where it might head with Bitcoin competing and maybe taking away some of that monetary premium?
So I think if you start at 1971, well, I think most people watching the show would know what happened, but essentially we went from a currency that was actually backed by gold. In a way, it wasn't really since the 30s actually, but we still had the belief that this currency that we were using was backed by gold. 1971 came around, they took the US off the gold standard, which gave them the ability to just create money out of thin air, essentially. And so that's really when the real estate market turned into something where people maybe had a house and they maybe had a cabin if they were lucky, if they were fortunate enough to have a cabin. But that was it. It wasn't really used as a store of value before that because the currency that we held was backed by a store of value, which was gold. And so since 1971, like the real estate market has just kind of gone up and up and up. And it seems like you buy a house, you hold on to it for 5 or 10 years, and you're going to probably double the value of it. And where real estate investors get wrong is that they think it's because real estate is a physical scarce asset and that's why it's a store of value. But that's not the case at all. The only reason why real estate has gone up in value is because of the amount of money that's been printed since 1971. And the people who have wealth, instead of keeping it in a checkings account where that money's just going to, the value of that money is just going to melt away, they prefer to hold it in like real estate or something. And then, of course, you get into like the rentals, the Airbnbs, which have become really popular in the last 10 years. But for the most part, it is a store of value that has only gone up because of money printing. And it's a store of value that has a ton of leaks in it and a ton of like problems involved in it. Like I had a rental house myself because I thought that this was the best investment. It was a good store of value because I was making decent money and I had some money left over. And so I put it into a rental house to store my value. And it turns out it's a horrible store of value. If you think about real estate versus Bitcoin, I think about Bitcoin like a battery. That's what a store of value is, right? Think about it like a battery. So if you went onto Amazon right now and you typed in portable battery, or what are those things called? I think they're called portable batteries. But anyways, it's basically something that stores energy, right? You want to keep it at your house in case the power goes out, where you can still charge your devices and stuff like that. And you can go on Amazon and you could look at different battery options. And one of them might be $100 and one of them might be $5,000. And the difference there between those two batteries is the ability to store energy into the future, right? So when you plug this device into a power pack, I think they're called, you plug it into the wall, you send electricity into this power pack, and you want that power to stay there for as long as possible because you never know when you're going to need it. You don't need it today. Your electricity's still on, the power's still on, so you can just plug your phone into the wall. But you want this power to be there sometime in the future where you need it. And that's how we should be thinking about our value as people, right? So with the two battery packs, the $100 battery pack, it might be there for a week. It might last a month even, but after that, it's going to start leaking. The energy leaks because it's a poor battery. And that's what fiat is. Fiat might last you, it might be good for a week or a month, but eventually it's going to leak. It's going to lose its value, lose its energy. But with Bitcoin, the crazy thing about Bitcoin is you could you could send Bitcoin into a wallet and you could leave it there for 100 years. And that same amount that you sent into that wallet will be there to the SAT in 100 years from now. So that's an example of a perfect battery. Just like the $5,000 battery from Amazon, if you plug that thing into the wall to store some energy, it's probably going to be there in 5 years because it's a good store of energy. That's what our money should be, a good store of energy. And so real estate is not that because it has plenty of leaks. It has maintenance costs. It has property taxes. It has insurance costs. It has tenants that you have to worry about. All of these things that you put into the real estate that you want to store into the future, those things are all leaks from that battery that eventually corrode your investment and make it I wouldn't say, I want to say shitty, but I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on here, a shitty store of value overall compared to Bitcoin.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and do it like an analogy here. And I recently went camping. My uncle he bought one of these like lithium batteries, what you're talking about, a portable battery, because we
Yeah.
had no power, and so people were charging their phones off it. Anyway, so anytime that someone was charging their phone off it, they could get to 100%, and the battery would barely move. And so it was a very good battery, expensive battery, very
Hmm.
very good. Then comes along a sandwich press. All right, guys, let's plug this in. Let's see if we can do some grilled sandwiches. Starts using it. I watch the percentage just start trickling down. And the way I see that is like, I would say fiat, for example, let's say that's a battery. Maybe the phone charges were the inflation. Maybe it's not that bad and it's just trickling, it's trickling. Oh, we need a print to fund a war. Boom, sandwich press. Or boom, maybe it's gold. Oh, we just found trillions of dollars worth of gold out of nowhere. Boom, terrible battery. And
Yes.
then there's Bitcoin. It's like everyone, it's a cap supply. And so this battery percentage just basically never goes down because although you might be trying to take as much power away from it as possible, it's always just going to continue. And there is no sudden influx of supply, just psych. We actually have this much Bitcoin dumped on the market, 5 million Bitcoin. That's not going to happen. That's never going to happen. And if that does happen, Bitcoin's failed. So until that point, Bitcoin has been the best battery for a store of value. And then I think when people try and say, real estate, for example, oh, you can leverage this, you can do this, you can do that. And it's like, that's not the common man. Like you guys are talking about, these are the traders, these are the very small percentage. So when you try and compare that, it's not comparing stores of value. You're trying to now just trade it something. You might as well be trading altcoins in some sense. Like there's so much risk. And yeah, there's more opportunity. Maybe you can outpace Bitcoin in the short term, but not everyone's a trader. Like, look at people that are retiring now. Do you think they're on their computers right now trying to day trade stocks and things? No, they're trying to look for something that's going to be good for inheritance, good for a story value, good for savings, something that they can take out of the old system, keep into a wallet offline where it's not just going to be taxed every time there's a transaction. Because I'm now seeing with my grandparents, and I talked about this in one of my videos, is they're trying to sort their inheritance and things as they get older. Suddenly everyone wants a piece of the pie, and I'm not talking friends and family. I'm talking about the people that are holding their stocks, holding their real estate, holding their retirement account. Anytime they try and move money anywhere, boom, 25% gone, boom, 30% gone. And I'm talking, this is hundreds of thousands of dollars just taken by someone. And it's like, yes, we know it makes no sense. Like, do they deserve those taxes? Do they deserve the transaction fees? No. But people are looking for what is going to hold value long term, but not only what can they move into now ready to give their kids. And so where do you think this whole inheritance thing with Bitcoin goes? Do you think it's a good inheritance tool? Do you think there's a way that older people now can maybe swap some of these assets, get some Bitcoin, and then pass on to their kids?
Yeah, I think I mean, I just wanted to say that the battery analogy that you had there before we go into the inheritance side of things, that's perfect. It's exactly how you should be thinking about it. And I think in that case, let's say that you had like a $5,000 battery, so it held its power for a while. It you plugged a few things in, it leaked a little bit, but over time, if you think about Bitcoin being the best battery, then that might be like a $5 billion battery where there's literally nothing that could happen that would actually take any energy from that, the store of value that you had there. So that's one component of it. And the other thing I wanted to mention there was that that's the store of value component of it. But that doesn't include the medium exchange where you could actually send it to anybody in the world for hardly any fees, or that it's highly divisible where you can't start breaking up a house into its windows and doors and things like that. It's better collateral than real estate is, and there's a whole bunch of different things um, that makes Bitcoin way better than real estate in pretty much every aspect. But in terms of inheritance, I do think that it is it's programmable money, right? And when you have programmable money that you can take self custody of yourself, that's a dream for inheritance, right? So you can use this asset and you can put a time lock on it and say, nobody in my family can spend this Bitcoin for at least 20 years after my dead man switch goes off, essentially. And therefore, you're going to give your family 20 years to kind of get their stuff together in terms of learning about this asset versus just you dying and all of a sudden they inherit it and they're like, well, I don't know what this stuff is. I want a new car, so I'm going to trade it all for a car tomorrow. And then everything you've ever worked for is gone. So there's like all these different components that you can actually build into your inheritance using Bitcoin that you can't do with any other asset. I mean, you could, but you're still relying on human beings as part of that equation there, right? You're relying on central entities to be able to facilitate that for you. Whereas with Bitcoin, you don't need anybody. You don't need anybody to know how much you have. You don't need anybody to actually pass it to somebody else. You can set up everything within your own family. And then when that time comes, it's done. And I'm not going to say if this is right or wrong, but you can actually pass away, leave your private keys with your kids, and nobody really has to know about that Bitcoin. And you can't do that with anything else. Again, I'm not saying that that's advisable. I don't want to get in trouble here. I'm saying it's possible.
You heard it from Joe, everyone. Trying to avoid tax, trying to avoid the government. We've got him, boys. We've got him.
It's sovereign money, right? That's what it is. It's money and an asset that was designed to eliminate the central banks and the central authorities of this world. So you think when that's the purpose of it, you're going to be able to find these different things that aren't available in our traditional system that Bitcoin can do. So that would be one.
I also love going back to its divisibility. I was thinking about inheritance and I was like, imagine you get to this age and trying to pass things on to kids. And it's like you've got a house, you've got stocks. And the only way you're going to do a fair trade, let's say you have 4 kids to part it all 25% each, you would have to sell everything, liquidate everything to do it fair because one person's not just going to get a house, like its value is not going to match the stocks. Stocks aren't going to match the value of the car they got given or the savings account they got given, whatever it is. And so you literally have to liquidate everything if you want to separate it evenly. And so Bitcoin, you don't even need to sell it. So you can just divide it evenly for each person. And so you're going to avoid that whole conflict with children that are like, you got the stocks. I wanted the stocks. How did I end up with the crappy house? It's like from the 80s. And it's like, well, if they maybe they do that or they just have to liquidate. And so it's so good for just divisible reasons.
Well, and I mean, going back to my accounting days, one thing that I did quite a bit of was work with farmers. And so in farmers there's nobody who cares about their inheritance more than farmers because they have farmland, right? Which I would argue that behind Bitcoin is probably the most scarce asset that exists, is, good farmland or oceanfront property. And so the tough thing for families nowadays is like their kids might not want to be part of the family farm, or one kid might, like the son might, but then the 2 daughters, obviously they don't want to farm. So then they have to figure out how to divide the assets up using the farm and the future profits of that farm and the future value of that farm, but also make it fair for the 2 daughters who are involved in the equation as well, without like making them or putting them into financial hardship by the whole thing. So it's a mess. Like it's a complete mess for farmers right now. And so even if you just layered Bitcoin on top of this and you had, split your Bitcoin 3 ways between your 3 kids, that's more than enough for them in the future. If you teach them properly, if you teach them the value of this thing, if you secure that properly, that's going to be worth more than the farmland, the Apple stocks, the Tesla stocks, the gold, everything. That's what everybody's going to want to hold. And you can now set it up in 3 different wallets, give them 3 different keys, or time lock it. There's so many different things that you can do with it, which is what makes it so special.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it's really going to flip things on its head. And I think if you can jump the gun now, if you have kids now, I think you should be setting aside a certain amount of Bitcoin, whether it's weekly, fortnight, or monthly, and building up their own college fund or car fund, whatever they want to do, maybe even a house deposit, be saving in Bitcoin. Because if you look at the numbers and if you just set aside, say, $10 a week in fiat against Bitcoin, it is ridiculous. Like I did 18 years, 30% growth of Bitcoin. $10 a week ends up being like 250 grand in 18 years, just like that. And that's being very conservative. And so you can plug in all the different numbers you want and stuff, but it's basically any percentage growth of Bitcoin is going to outperform trying to set aside a little fiat amount for your kids. And so, Yeah, it's criminal, like people trying to save for their kids in a college fund and a deposit, and then they get to that age, and it's not even worth that, and it's not even worth anything, and so it's so sad because so many people have done that. Whereas Bitcoin, man, set aside some Bitcoin for your kids. Um, Jumping on to the next sort of topic, you talk about trying to include Bitcoin in your net worth. And so you try and do these net worth calculations, which I really like with the table breakdown and actually understanding what each person's worth monetary wise. And then you can watch Bitcoin just eat into everything that you own over time because it outperforms all of your assets, but also your liabilities. And so maybe it clears debts and then maybe it also just eats into your net worth in general. But how can you sort of dive into that to change people's views on their finances, understanding, hey, you've actually got a lot more than you think?
I mean, it kind of came out of, out of my mouth because it was something that I actually experienced. So I had to go to the bank about a year ago now, and I had to either combine a loan or get a different line of credit or something like that. I mean, I tell people all the time, like, I'm not 100% in Bitcoin. I'm about 110% into Bitcoin. So that's why I have mortgages and line of credits, because I mean, why wouldn't you take advantage of a 5% interest rate versus a 60% return with Bitcoin? So, anyways, I had to produce a net income statement. And, being a Bitcoiner, I almost separate that world from reality. I don't know why that is. I think it's just because it's still so ingrained in me, the existing financial system, and it's everybody you talk to, every business you go to, everybody is still pretty much 100% in that system. And so I kind of feel like I'm in Bitcoin when I'm talking on here, or at rare times in real life. So I just kind of almost see that as like something that's just there, right? It doesn't really seem real, even though I know it's the only thing that really matters in the future. It doesn't really seem real. So what I told people to do was just get a piece of paper. Don't do it on like Excel, because then Google will see your net worth. But just get like a piece of paper and write down your assets on your left side and liabilities on the right side. So if you had a house and that house is worth, let's say, $400,000, you put that on the left side. $400,000, that's the value of it. And you can find that with like your property tax statement. It usually says the value of your house. But then on the right side, in the liability, put your mortgage. And usually, hopefully, that's going to be a net positive. You have net equity in the house. And then you put like your Bitcoin on the left side. And hopefully, for the most part, you don't have any debt attached to that. So that'd be an asset. And then you go down the list, maybe your car, put the value of your car on the left side and put your loan amount on the right side. And all of these should be a net positive for you at the end of it. And then you also put like your credit cards. If you have any credit card debt, if you have like a line of credit, you put that on the right side as well. And then at the end of it, you put a total and you can see kind of what your net worth is. And I think that when you include Bitcoin in that calculation, it makes it real. It says, you know what, here's all my assets here, Bitcoin, including Bitcoin. I'm actually sitting pretty good. And I have a pretty good feeling that this Bitcoin is going to go up, and then it's going to keep going up. And my liabilities should over time keep going down. And therefore, why am I spending so much time and energy being stressed out about this illusionary financial system when I have the best asset that's ever existed, and that's going to keep making me richer and richer and richer while everything else kind of fades away? It just kind of helps your psyche. It helps you understand that you actually are more rich than you think you are if you have any amount of Bitcoin right now. And you're going to watch that go from like 5% of your net assets to 10% and then 20%. And then you're like, well, maybe I should have sold my car back in 2025 and bought more Bitcoin if I knew this was the case. But it's just a good exercise, I think, because again, for a Bitcoiner who's living and surrounded by fiat people and people, still entrenched in that world, you need a good reminder once in a while that you are making the right decision here. You're more wealthy than you think you are, and that number is only going to go up over time, barring anything crazy in the world, I guess.
I think Bitcoin really encourages saving. I think it puts off the spending because once you appreciate what you're holding, it's so hard to let go. Whereas I think everyone in the back of your mind knows that dollars are kind of useless. Like you receive dollars and you're sort of already thinking what I can spend with it straight away. You're just thinking, how can I get rid of it? And so that's ingrained in society already. It's like, oh, I got my pay slip. I'm just going to go shop at the local shopping center. And it's like, far out, man. We've come to this point where it's just consume, 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 and all these programs like Afterpay and all these things where it's just like, oh, buy now, pay later. And it's like, it's just feeding this machine so bad. Like young people are in so much credit debt now in Australia. And it's just so sad because they hand out these credit cards to just every man and his dog. The people think in their heads, oh, as long as I keep the balance above 2 grand by the end of the month or whatever it is, I can avoid all the interest, but they never do. Like they just go on a spending spree. Next thing you know, they're not making as much as they owe. And yeah, it's absolutely cooking people. And then there's me. Last year, this year I got married, but last year was the big year of saving, getting ready for the wedding, trying to go all out for this wedding because, it's a big deal for us. And, we're both 21, very young to get married, and a lot of people would think we're crazy. And then I roll into the next year, and my wife's telling everyone, yo, we're broke. We got no money. And I'm thinking, we ain't got no fiat, but we got BTC, baby. And so it's just funny because
Exactly. It's perfect for
I'm
that.
just like,
Yeah.
I'm broke, whatever you want to call that. But like, I'm rich. Like, I'm like, not in fiat terms, but where this thing's headed, like, I'm all good now. Like, it's no dramas. And so
Yes.
it's just funny because I think if I was saving in only fiat, I would have had nothing left after the wedding, purely just because I would have bumped up things at the wedding or maybe just spent the extra. But because we had set a goal, hey, let's set aside this amount every single week towards the wedding fund. And then meanwhile, I'm on the side like, how can I get the extra 150 for Bitcoin? And I'm trying to find a way that I can have Bitcoin and the wedding. And so, she wasn't thinking about it, but I was. And so that's worked out like, oh, I actually do have money, I guess. It's not much. Like, no one think that I'm rich. I'm just saying, like, in fiat terms, I'm not rich, but in Bitcoin terms, I'm a Satoshi millionaire. So it's just funny because it really does change your spending habits. And I think before Bitcoin, I mean, I was into crypto, so I was chucking money at that like crazy, hoping that I could turn, $1,000 into $1 million. But outside of the crypto space, you really are just thinking, all right, maybe leave aside for a car, then a house, and then I'll just go from there. And then it's like they'll get the bare minimum house, bare minimum mortgage repayments, and then the rest is just like, oh, I've got leftover. Let's just go out for dinner. Let's just spend it. So everyone has now got so used to just scraping by. And then I saw that and I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm like, I'm not buying a house anytime soon. And the only reason if I did buy a house was to get my interest rates down, because trying to borrow over here is like, I tried to borrow money to buy Bitcoin. There's my confession. And then it's like 18%. And I'm like, that's cooked because I had nothing to put up as collateral. It's like, oh, put up your car as security. Oh, my car's from 2013. You can't put up a 12-year-old car. And so like you have it lucky over in US or even I don't know what the rates in Canada, but over here, if you have nothing to put up for collateral, like you're cooked. And so I'm not gonna.
Well, it's more risk for them, right? It makes sense.
Yeah, no, it doesn't make sense. And I'm not gonna answer whether I did get a loan because there'd be some people listening to this, but the fact that I now do not give a frick about dollars anymore, I just go, I don't care. Like in my head, people are like, you spent that much on Bitcoin. It's like, I didn't spend it. I just traded it. It's like, I don't value that crappy payslip anymore because I know they can print it at the click of a button. And so I now value this thing. So why would I try and save as much of these crappy dollars that to me are just worth nothing? Like they're just so insignificant. Even when I see like amounts on Amazon for things I need to buy, I'm just like, my mind is just like, how many Satoshis is that? And it's like, that's how far I've gone now. And it's like, is it worth trading those Satoshis? And then, but it's actually been working out good. Like I needed to buy a phone and I've been trying to run this crappy iPhone 11 that's not charging anymore and it's dying by the time it's smoker at work. And I'm like, this is cooked. And then I was like, I have to just let it go. So I bought an iPhone from Amazon and it was like $1,000 Aussie, but it was only 600,000 Satoshis. And then I was like, really, really hard to part sats. Like I could have probably got a cheaper phone, but I wanted this nice phone. But I've been saving that Bitcoin for like nearly a year. And so it's appreciated whatever it has in that year. And so that phone to me was significantly cheaper by adopting Bitcoin. So that's the power of saving in Bitcoin and even little things. I use the Strike app and I buy Amazon gift cards instead of buying with fiat because I have no fiat. And so it's worked out good. Bitcoin appreciates, my life gets cheaper, everything around me is just going cheaper and cheaper. And yeah, like maybe you can sort of share an experience where you share like an analogy, not an analogy, just a personal story of your tires for your car where you've ended up saving. Can you sort of dive into how it works as a Bitcoin as a savings account?
I think that that's where most people get Bitcoin wrong. And this is something I got wrong when I first got into Bitcoin too. I looked at it as an investment, like something like an Apple stock or something like even a replacement for real estate. And that's just not what it is. It's not an investment. It's literally just the best way to store your time and energy. So whatever it is that you do for work, a job, own a business, any profits that you have left over, you put it into Bitcoin. And because you're doing that, you're not really and that's why I hate the narrative of like never sell your Bitcoin. That's not the goal here. The goal isn't to try to get as much Bitcoin and like become a Scrooge McDuck of Bitcoin. It's like just to store your time and energy in a better place because as Joey mentioned there, your life just gets cheaper and that's all there is to it. Meanwhile, on the other side of things, people who save their money in fiat, their life is getting more and more expensive because every dollar that they print, they make your dollars less valuable. They're stealing your time and energy because you're storing it in the fiat dollar. So while everybody else's life is getting more and more expensive, people in Bitcoin, their life is getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, especially in a place like Australia or in Canada where our governments are Looney Tunes and they're printing more money and spending more money on the stupidest shit than any other government. So it's like everybody else is suffering, but Bitcoiners are actually, life is getting cheaper and cheaper for us. So that's the hard thing for me is like, I get frustrated when the price goes up because that means I get less sats for the dollars that I make. But then I also have to remind myself, like the sats that I have now are buying me way more than they did before. Like a couple years ago, for an example, we would sell a head cover for King Golf and I would charge somebody like 300,000 sats. And now that same head cover is worth like 75,000 sats. So like if you're holding Bitcoin, like that item, exact same item went from 300,000 sats down to 75,000 sats. So if you're measuring your life in Bitcoin and that's kind of like your unit of account, life is just going to get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper for you. So that's what I did. Kind of what you said there is like, I knew I needed new tires in the next year. And so I bought some Bitcoin. Let's say that I bought $1,000 worth of Bitcoin and the tires were about $1,000. So that Bitcoin went from being worth 1,000 to 2,000. So essentially my tires were free for me. I still had $1,000 worth of Bitcoin, $1,000 for the tires, and the tires were pretty much free because that's my unit of account. That's what I'm saving my time and energy in. And life gets cheaper. Sorry, my screensaver just went on here. I guess I got tired of my story.
It's just like shut the hell up, boy. Um, that's the fiat attacking you. Now,
Yeah.
I think also Bitcoin, what I've noticed is it gives things like a second life. So I've been thinking about this. You always sell like, you always tell us sell the crap around your house, and then I've watched this
Yep.
in real time, and it's actually insane. So I got my dad into Bitcoin. Never thought that was possible, and now he's always asking me about it. Anyway, he bought a KTM motocross bike years ago, and at the time it was $12,000, so about 8 grand US, and it's very expensive for a dirt bike, especially the year he bought it. Like in today's money, maybe 16 grand. I don't know. And he sold it the other day, 6 grand cash. And so some guy picks it up for 6 grand cash, and people just go, "Oh man, you've lost so much value on that thing." And then he puts it straight into Bitcoin. And I'm just thinking, give it enough time. It's not a $12,000 bike. It's not an $18,000 bike. It's potentially a $20,000 or $30,000 bike, and it's like 10 years old. And it's like, I love this idea of giving things a second life because you just think the crap around your house is just losing and losing and losing. And you know it's losing. Not everyone's like stupid, but they don't have anywhere to put it, like the cash. And so they just think, oh, it really is just $200 cash. Like I'll just go spend it. Maybe it's my grocery money. I'm like, bro, that's going straight. Anything I sell, I'm not using that as cash because if it was going to exist before, it means I don't need the money. It was just going to be there anyway. I need to just put this in Bitcoin and it will appreciate. So another example, I bought a very, very nice snowboard. I've been doing a bit of snowboarding every winter season in Australia. We only get snow for like 3 months, so you got to make the most of it. And went
You get snow there
yeah, like 4 or 5 hours from where I live. There's also 2.5 hours away. Yeah, it's so random.
in the mountains?
Aussie's like 35 degrees Celsius in summer and like so hot during the year, and then randomly winter comes and it's like, let's go snowboarding. It's like, what is happening? We live in the flipping matrix, bro. I think they just click a button and change the weather, so we just go for it. But it's all in the mountains. It's not down here. I've never seen.
Yeah, okay.
But then like my grandma will call me, yo, it's snowing over here. And I'm like, it's not meant to be snowing. Anyway, something's going on. Maybe there's a bit of cloud seeding, who knows. Anyway, and I bought a I bought a very expensive snowboard. I dropped bands. Like I was like, stuff it, I'm going big. Bought it all brand new. And then recently tore my ACL. So now it's like, sheesh, I'm not snowboarding for at least 12 months, probably 24 months with recovery. And I was like, you know what? I should just sell it all. Like, I should try and get some money back. I'll probably lose fiat dollars. But if I'm not snowboarding for at least 2 years, how much can Bitcoin go up in 2 years? Like, maybe I should take that gamble. So now I've chucked it up on Facebook and I'm trying to get rid of it. And if I don't get rid of it, who cares? Like, I'll snowboard eventually one day anyway. But if I do, bro, I'll eventually be able to buy it all back anyway. So these are the strategies most people don't even think of. And it even goes as far as my car. I'm like, I go to my wife. I sound crazy. Like at this point, I'm just cooked. I'm like, we should sell both our cars. We should just walk to work. And she's just like, that's not happening. And so maybe we'll sell my car because we could easily do one car because I live 5 minutes from mum and dad's. And he said he could give me a work vehicle. And I'm just thinking, is this an absolute bowler strategy? Like, am I actually the smartest person in the world? Like, sell my car, put it in Satoshis, don't have to pay like registration or service or insurance. I was like, I could stack some sats right now. And then all my mates like, don't sell it, bro. Like, come on. And I'm just like, it's not because I want cash, man. It's because I'll be able to buy whatever car I want in
Yeah.
5 years with this amount of money. Like, it's still a nice car. And so it's not, I love my car. Do you think I want to get rid of it? But I know it's just sat sitting there and like I barely drive it. I'm like so tempted to just let it go. See what happens. I'll let you know what happens. But it's interesting. Yeah.
I just think that Bitcoin now gives people an incentive and a hope and like something to look forward to. Like I did a calculation yesterday. I'm going to do a video on it right away, but to get to 1 million sats over 4 years, all you need is 500 sats per day. And that costs about 57 cents right now. And so if you're somebody who's like 20, 25, 30 years old and you have like the next 30 years that you want to just save for, like that million Satoshis in 30 years from now is going to be more than you'll ever be able to spend even. And you could do that for literally 57 cents a day for 5 years. And, Bitcoin goes up, so it might go to $1 a day and then maybe $2 a day, but that's still very doable. But the point is people just need something to strive for because you don't have that in the fiat system. There's no hope for anything. It's just like, things are just going to get worse and worse and worse. So like, what's the point? Like I sold a set of Nike irons about 10 years ago now for $350. And those irons are probably worth, a little bit more now because Nike stopped making golf clubs. But like, I remember selling them and they meant a lot to me. And at that time, I went and bought like a case of beer and filled my car with gas and bought some groceries. And like, that seemed like a really bad trade to me. Like my favorite irons, they're not brand new, but they were a nice set of irons. And I got a case of beer, a tank of gas, and groceries for it. It's like, what's even the point? And so people just don't see any sort of incentive to get rid of stuff in their house. But if they did, not only they're going to get more sats and more Bitcoin and actually make a dent in the future, but they can also just clear their head a little bit and like have less clutter around the house. So I think that the incentives there align and it really forces people to think longer term, which I think has been the biggest plague in fiat world is just such a short term, want everything right now, have no patience in anything kind of mentality. And it's just like, it trickles down every aspect of society that way.
Yeah, another example I'll share. I bought this, like, we call it a paddock bomb. Do you guys call it a paddock bomb where it's just like a car that you buy to muck around in a paddock somewhere and you just do like jumps, drifts, We call it.
Oh,
Well, it's just like a bomb of a car. Like it's worth $200 and it's a piece of junk. So you just jump it and have a bit of fun.
are you saying panic?
Paddock, like yard,
Pa-
equivalent to a yard, like a big property.
oh, okay. I
Sheesh.
thought you said panic bomb. I was like, yikes, we're gonna get kicked off of YouTube here.
It is kind of a panic
No,
bomb.
I've
I'll
never heard
say
of
that.
that before. We just call them like junkers.
Yeah, I guess it's a junker, whatever. And well, we call it a bomb. So that might get me in trouble these days with what's going on, but we'll see what happens. And um, it was sitting there for ages. Nice Subaru Impreza. Oh, it was my baby, but I really did nothing with it. Like I was living at mum and dad's. I can't go driving illegally on the road anymore. I'm married. Like I can't be doing silly stuff like that. And so I was like, I'm just gonna sell it. And so there's these people that just go around and they buy these like $200, $300 cars, and they're obviously trying to flip it, either for steel or just to get different parts and stuff. Anyway, and this like absolute Darrow rocks up, and he's like, "Hey mate, can I sell your car? And, can I buy your car?" And I'm like, "Yeah, bro, all good, $300 cash." And then I see on his phone because he wants me to do the bank transfer, so he literally passes me his phone. Anyway, and I just see one of his accounts negative $300,000, and then I'm just like, you took that loan to go get a $200 car? Like I was just blown away, and it made me realize like these guys think they're going to break out by buying and selling these crappy cars. But then I thought, hey, it's actually a good business model if you're putting all that money in Bitcoin, because you could just go around every little extra bit you get Bitcoin, Bitcoin, Bitcoin. By the end of the year, you probably have one whole Bitcoin. Like who knows how much they're turning over. But because they're trying to do it in fiat, which is constantly losing value, they're taking out these huge loans to start their business. Like you have to get a tow truck and things like that. And I'm just thinking, I wanted to say to the guy, like, you're never going to clear this $300,000 debt. Like, I didn't want to be that depressing guy and tell him how it is. Also, because I'm 21 and I have no debt. So it's easier to say. But I was just thinking, this guy's cooked, bro. Like, if he's begging me for a $300 car or whatever, and I'm like, yikes. Like, that's just the reality, man. Like, people really think they could clear those debts. And it's sad when I know he's not making much money. Like, he was begging me on the way out. He sees some speaking of batteries, spare batteries in the yard. And he's like, can I take those batteries? Because he knows he could get, 10, 30, $40 for them or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, nah, bro, because I know that they're worth that as well. But I'm like, he's so desperate to make every little bit of cash. And I'm just thinking, imagine having $300,000 over your head and all you're getting is like $50 here and there. It's like, I can't see a world where he clears his debt and he starts breaking out of the matrix, buying and selling these cars. What are your thoughts on that?
Well,
I don't
I
know.
think I think it's a perfect like example of like somebody who's still stuck in like the old world of making money, like using in that case you'd be using like your labor as your leverage in that sense, because essentially what you'd be doing there is you'd be going to house, which is taking your time, and you'd be relying on your knowledge of like, this car I could see being worth $600, so I'm going to offer this guy like $200. I'm going to capture the spread there, but you can only do that so much a day. Like this isn't something that's scalable in that sense. And I feel like even now with the internet and everybody having like so much access to information, like his leverage there that he might have had before, he doesn't have that anymore. He can't really trick people into like lowballing them and making like a decent profit off of that. And that's kind of what the conversation started today. Like you're never going to get ahead. You're never going to get ahead by trying to use like labor and existing capital and stuff like that as your leverage. You have to be using things like media. And that's kind of what I wanted to mention when you and I were, talking there at the start about your dad's business and what you do is like, even though you're working and even though you're stuck in, maybe you feel like you're stuck in that job, but like the skills that you're building right now with this YouTube channel and the relationships that you're building, those are going to be leveraged in the future, whether you have the grass cutting business or not. You're probably going to lean on what you're doing here much more than you do with that stuff, because it is a different world that we're moving into. And a lot of people just don't understand that right now. You'll never get ahead by utilizing things like that, like your time or your labor, versus like utilizing the internet and the network and the global reach that you can have now, and you can scale that in a different way that you just can't do in that old world. So that's a perfect example of somebody trying to leverage something that just doesn't work anymore. It's like it's never going to work. That's the point. He might scrape by in life, but he's never going to build wealth that way because you cannot scale that business.
Yeah, I was thinking this I don't want to offend anyone in case they're watching, but the people at my work, they could tell this is not me being cocky or confident or anything absurd. But they could tell me any amount of savings they have or money they've set aside. And there's a huge range of age there at this work. So there's a young guy who just started 16. He's the youngest employee now. I used to be the youngest. And then there's like a 65-year-old guy still working. And so there's this huge range of people. I've met all sorts of people. I've probably met over 100 different people through this business. And they could tell me any amount of savings they have. And in my head, I'm like, yeah, that's doable. Like mine could grow to that in Bitcoin and not by 65. I'm talking maybe 30. And that's not me just trying to be cocky. And like, I don't say that out loud or anything, but they've spent their entire life getting to that point. And it's like, I'm not willing to trade the next 45 years to get that because I know it's not worth anything in the future. It's barely worth anything now. Like, say someone told me the other day $300,000, and I'm like, it sounds like a lot, but it just is not. And then like in my head, I'm thinking US dollars, that's 200 grand. So you've just lost 100 grand if you went to the best country in the world. And so I'm just thinking, man, I'm on Jekyll. Like I thought I was making good money, but if I went to the US, I'm broke. And so it's just funny because everyone, they just get fed just enough information to believe they're wealthy and they think they have so much capital. And I'm like, these days you buy like one nice Toyota for like $300,000 and it's like, or $100,000. Maybe you could buy two cars. And it's like, man, what happened to this world, man? Like $300,000 used to be a house. Like used to be able to buy a really nice house in Australia for 200,000 Aussie dollars. And so now it's just not reality, man. There's places in Sydney, like I talked about this with Bitcoin Bram. There's places in Sydney that are like 2, 3, 4 mil. So even US conversion, it's like a couple mil. And so it's just nuts. Like they're not worth that. They're built out of styrofoam. They're plastered over. Like it's just terrible quality. And people just still buy them. People still live in them. People still think Sydney's the place to be. And I'm like, it's just so corrupt. I just think it's so sad you believe you have value and you just don't. It's just worth nothing. I really like your idea of Bitcoin has no ceiling if fiat has no bottom. And so could you sort of go into what that means, like whether it's related to the money printing or what's sort of your view on that?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't come up with that phrase, so I can't take credit for it, but it's the absolute truth. And one thing we're going to see here over these next, I'd say, decade, it's already happening in certain countries around the world where um, their currency is basically zero compared to Bitcoin, like zero. And so the thing that bothers me with a lot of people is like, I'll post a video and it'll say like, $10 million Bitcoin, and I'll talk about that and give my reasons why I think one Bitcoin is going to be worth $10 million, and then it's going to be worth $100 million, and then it's going to be worth $1 billion, and I really believe that over time it will become that. And people will be like, well, Jor, you're an idiot. There's only $950 trillion worth of assets in the world. You clearly can't do math. That amount of Bitcoin times that amount of price would quadruple the amount of wealth in this world. And what I tell them is like, you're still stuck with a fiat mindset. That $950 trillion is the result of a controlled and manipulated system. That's the amount that they tell us is there. We have no idea how many dollars actually exist out there, right? If you think back about 24 years ago, you might not even been born at this point, but a day before a certain thing happened in September of 2001, the Pentagon in the US announced that you can look it up yourself. I won't say what happened there,
I
but it
have
just
no
goes to
idea.
show that we it just goes to show that like look up what happened right before that date with the Pentagon, because there was just a bunch of money, a lot of money that all of a sudden just went missing. And so essentially the purpose of why I'm saying this is like, we measure things, we value things in this world. The US dollar is pretty much our unit of account right now, but it's a broken measuring stick. We have no idea how many dollars actually exist today. We have an idea based on the number that they tell us, But these central banks have never been audited before. 111 years, they've never been audited before. So how do you value anything on that unit of account? And so it just doesn't work. But in terms of like the why I think there's no ceiling on it is because Bitcoin is absolute scarcity. And this is something that humans have never had before in millions of years that we've been around. We've never had an asset with absolute scarcity before with this kind of technology that you can actually do something. You might say, well, Jor, I painted a picture on my wall and there's only one of them. So that's absolute scarcity, but that's a whole different thing, right? Like this is a major network, global network. So with absolute scarcity. And so basically whatever you think Bitcoin is worth in terms of like $100,000 or $95,000 or $110,000, all of that's fake. It's not even a real metric. One thing you could do is you look at the amount of houses that are in the world today. I think it's like 2 billion houses. And you divide that by the amount of Bitcoin that exists. And if Bitcoin ends up being a unit of account in the future, that's going to be like the math on that is like 250,000 sats per house on average. And then you take acres of land, and then you take vehicles, and then you take all these different assets and you literally just divide it by 21 million. And there's really no ceiling on how high this thing goes. Plus, with technology now, we're going to be able to create whatever we want to. There's going to be so much abundance. We're going to have no shortage of things in this world, but we need something that's scarce with absolute scarcity that can actually measure these things accurately without these centralized entities influencing that. So Bitcoin's going to go from 10 million and then to 100 million and then to a billion. And it's just never going to stop because everything, every asset, all of our human potential, our productivity is all going to be divided by 21 million. And as that increases, so does the value of each one of those scarce units called Satoshis.
A lot of people have like this misconception. When I say I'm never going to sell my Bitcoin, they just assume I'm going to just hodl, never ever transact with it. I'm like, I'm still going to trade it. If you came to me and you said, I've got this 100-acre block, beautiful property, river down the middle, mountains, I'm like, damn, I'll give you some of my Bitcoin. And so I think you're on the same page with that. Like, if you have something to offer me that's worth my Bitcoin, then sure. But it's so hard to put a value on that right now because the dollar, that's all we really have. And so the dollar's crap. Like, I think I watched Bitcoin just drop the last couple of days with the news of Tehran and US and all this chaos going on. And so I watched Bitcoin drop over here from 160 to 150. And I was just thinking, how is it so cheap? Like, if dollars are worth nothing and could be printed out of nothing, I was just like, bro, we need to get some more. Like, this is crazy. Like, I understand in my head this could potentially do not only 100x, but maybe 1,000x if they continue to print, because once it all gets exposed, how many dollars are in the system or how much is being printed, like maybe that initial number is pretty close, but what are their projections to print? We don't know. Like, what if there's not only a quadrillion amount of things, dollars in the system? What about in 5 years it's four quadrillion? Maybe they 4x in the next 4 years. Like, we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. And so all I know is Bitcoin's scarce. And so every time a dollar gets printed, it has to go live somewhere. And where's it going to live? I think it's going to live in Bitcoin. And I think it's just going to be that money vacuum we talk about. Like, not only the printed dollars coming to the system have to go somewhere, but it's going to pull from other stores of value. It's going to pull from real estate. Yes. It's going to pull from gold, because they're not only going to be sold, but people are just going to understand, hey, this is superior. This is way better. And so I think it's actually really, really bullish seeing gold go up, because people are going, fiat sucks. Stocks actually suck. Turns out there is a ceiling on these things. As soon as China decides to pull out, I'm not in your market anymore, after Trump says get stuffed, suddenly all their stocks are getting absolutely cooked. And they're like, I need to go back to the basics. Store of value, a rock. It's like, far out. We're going back to a rock. Damn it. Like, why does this keep happening? I don't want to go back to a rock again. We tried this. And so we see gold rise, and I think that's everyone with fear and panic and thinking it's a good store of value. And I think it is. It's superior to those other things. Like, I'm sort of on team gold in some sense, but then there's Bitcoin. It's like, if we continue to live in a digitalized world, which is where we're headed, and unless something World War III happens, but at that point, who cares? I'm not caring about my Bitcoin at that point. I'm caring about water and food. And so
Yes.
if this world does continue, if the world doesn't end, then you want to be on Bitcoin, best store of value.
I think that's important to just dive in a little bit into that, because I think that that's a big misconception that a lot of people have is like, well, Bitcoin's only going up because they're printing more money, which is true. But in that world, if Bitcoin was only going up because of the money printer, that wouldn't really benefit Bitcoin either, because as they print more money, the price of everything still goes up. And even if you're staying in Bitcoin, you're not getting ahead, you're not going in reverse, you're pretty much just breaking even with that. But as you kind of followed that up with, as that $450 trillion flows out of real estate and gold and the bond market, that's what's really going to actually increase the value of Bitcoin. As the demand, as more and more people are using Bitcoin, that's what's actually going to give Bitcoiners more purchasing power over time. If they just printed $1 trillion and all of it went into Bitcoin, Bitcoiners would break even at that point, right? Because everything else would be more expensive. So even though you held it in Bitcoin, you didn't get any further ahead. But it's the money that's flowing from these other markets and the demand and the more and more people who are joining this network, that's what's actually driving the purchasing power of these sats up over time. And the reason why all that's going to flow out of Bitcoin is what we talked about. It's a better version of all these things: real estate, gold, bonds, stocks. It is the asset that everybody's going to want. And that's what's actually going to raise the purchasing price or the purchasing power of Bitcoin, and not just because they're printing money.
Yeah, I think what I realized over the whole Trump versus Kamala thing was like, obviously, I would have voted Trump 1,000 times over. Like, no one can argue that. But the point was, I thought in my head, all right, we can vote Trump in, and maybe he's going to reduce the printing of money. Maybe he can do this, maybe he can do that. And I think you can only do so much trying to cut out all the useless crap, which I think they did a pretty good job of. But actually understanding Trump can't turn this ship around, whether I can agree with a lot of the things he does and says, but he can't turn the ship around. Like, they have to continue to print to keep up this house of cards, because eventually, yes, it will blow up, but to avoid it blowing up sooner, they just have to continue to build the illusion. And so how do they build the illusion? They just print, print, print. So we live in a completely illusionary system. I think that's why people use the matrix term, because it really is just all propped up on bullcrap. So it's interesting to watch that, and when will it unfold, I'm not sure, but I think it's unfolding now. So where do you think the next 5-10 years heads in terms of, I suppose, Bitcoin price, but also just, do you think this game continues for the next 5-10 years? Do you see a collapse inbound? Do you think the wars have something to do with it? Like, what are your thoughts short term, 5-10 years? Does this game continue, or does something change?
I really think that things are going to change in the next 4 years. I've had the theory, and this is not really my theory. It's based on a bunch of information that I've looked into and dots that I've connected in my own life. I think that the Federal Reserve is just going to go away. And because people are becoming more and more aware of it, and that's pretty much what kills it. It's all these things that are coming to light. Sunlight destroys a lot of things. And I think that people are starting to realize that, hey, this fiat dollar isn't really worth anything. Who is the Federal Reserve, by the way? Who's protecting them? I mean, you can go layers on top of this and look at it, but like, one of the things that the new administration in the U.S. has talked about from back in 2016 is getting rid of the Federal Reserve. And you've seen how many feuds that they've had amongst Powell and the president in the U.S. And I really think that they're going to the U.S. is pretty much positioning themselves to create a new dollar. I think it's going to be the Treasury dollar. I think it's going to be backed by mostly Bitcoin, maybe some gold, maybe some other stuff as well. But I mean, Henry Ford came out with this idea 100 years ago, a currency that's backed by energy, which is what Bitcoin is. And so I think that there's going to be all these different layers built on top of Bitcoin, including stable coins, including different US currencies. But if they're not backed by Bitcoin, they're all going to trend towards zero. I think that that's going to be the trend that we see, is that anything that isn't backed by Bitcoin is going to go to zero. And I talked about business owners and people who actually add value to the world. They're going to be the ones who drive this change. And if you think about it this way. Let's make this real. Let's say that you're somebody who likes to eat, good ribeye steak, or you have a favorite, you get your eggs from this guy down the road, and you've been eating them for 10 years. And all of a sudden, that guy has been orange pilled. He's learned about Bitcoin. He's learned about the Federal Reserve. He's learned that the money is fake. And all of a sudden, he says, "Sorry, bud, we're only accepting Bitcoin now." So, what are you going to do? Are you going to go find somebody else who's going to sell you eggs to this quality? Or are you going to find somebody else who has this quality of ribeye steaks that you really like? Or are you going to have to buy some Bitcoin and give it to that person? Right. So I think that that's going to be the real driver of the next stage of Bitcoin adoption is merchants and businesses realize that the fiat dollar is fake, realize the importance of holding an asset like Bitcoin and what that does for your balance sheet. And they're going to start saying, "Hey, unless you pay me in Bitcoin, I'm not going to sell you any products." And then the consumer is going to be forced to adopt Bitcoin. But by that time, again, they're hardly going to get any sats for the dollar. And then it's going to go for a cent for a sat. And then it's going to go, it's just going to keep going like that because all of this is going to flow into Bitcoin and there's only so much of it. So that's why it's going up forever.
Yeah, I love to think of like there's this famous Bible verse and it says, all darkness will be brought to light and all truth will be revealed. And I just think like it applies all through history. I think these games can only go for so long and eventually they're exposed. And so I love the book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, because it really plays this story of these people that knew what they were doing, like it was all planned. And so it all just unfolds where there's a group of people, very, very small group of people that go, yo, this could be the power of the world, basically. Like we will have the ability to print money in some sense. And so let's centralize banking. Let's basically control the money supply. We're almost in control of the government in some sense. They're not only private, but they're federal. And it's like, well, are they federal? Are they private? It's like they knew what they were doing. And I think now we zoom out and it looks like their plan worked. And so this is now
They did it pretty well.
this is the unwinding of that. And so yeah, I think it's time that truth will be revealed, and it's interesting to watch this play out. We're in a very interesting part of history. I think we'll be, maybe not us personally, but this period of time will be in the history books. Well, I suppose they choose what they want to write, but hopefully we make it, Joe. Hopefully we make it in the history books. We'll see what happens.
We will.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing too. I didn't really mention any price predictions over time. I think if people want to look at some objective math in terms of what Bitcoin's going to be worth in fiat terms, you can go to, I think it's called, just Google reverse Kager calculation, and you can look at it yourself, put in the price of Bitcoin, put in 50 or 60%, put in the years, and it'll show you. So that's what's happened. I think it's going to be even higher in the future. But again, it doesn't matter because you're still measuring it in something that's completely fake. And I think what people should be focused on most right now is actually creating as much value as you can, learning how to leverage technology, whether that's AI or media. That's going to be the next chapter in the world. Is we're moving into an attention economy because we're going to have so much scarcity, or not scarcity, so much abundance in terms of things, to watch. AI is going to replace a lot of people's jobs, and so a lot of people aren't going to be working anymore. And it's all going to be attention, and that media is something that you can actually scale, where you can make a video that's very valuable to people. You sell for $10, you sell that to 2,000 people. That's a year's salary that you spent a day making. Like that's the kind of stuff that you need to be thinking about because that's the world that we're moving into here. And so don't work your ass off, in this old economy. Start focusing on where we're going and start building your life around that. And every dollar that you have left over at the end of the day, put that into Bitcoin and you're going to be much better off regardless of what happens.
I was about to ask what's some final advice for young people, but I think you nailed it. Just before we go, can you just plug your Living in the Future Patreon and the 365-day course? Because I think so many people need to hear what that's about, not only the community, but the 365-day course is just awesome. I think step-by-step Bitcoin course. And so just go into a little bit before you go because I think it's very valuable.
Sure. So actually, this is good timing because I think I'm going to close off the Living in the Future community. Again, I said I think we have about 130 people in there right now. I think I'm going to close that off because it can only get to a certain point. Like I don't want 500 people in there; it just wouldn't even be a good thing. But one thing I have been doing. So I guess on that note, you have about a week to join. You get to join the likes of Joey. He's in the chat. Jerry Loves Freedom is in there. There's a couple people that you probably know from the Bitcoin YouTube world. And so it's just a great place. We got together, we got to meet in Vegas and in person finally. It makes things like that much easier. It gives you a place to talk to things, your concerns. Just having somebody there to say, hey, you know what, this is going to be okay. Don't panic. Don't do anything stupid. It's just FUD. It's just a psyop essentially. And to learn things too. Like if you're trying to set up a cold card, or you're looking at exchanges, or you're looking at running a node or running a Linux computer, there's somebody in that community who's going to be able to help you. And the nice thing about Bitcoin is Bitcoiners are very, very helpful. And so you might say, hey, you're an expert in Linux. I want to chat for half an hour. And they're just going to do it. And then maybe you can send them 20,000 sats or 10,000 sats for your time, something like that. That's how Bitcoiners work. That's the beauty of it. So that's the Living the Future community. You could join that if you want to. I'll send Joey the link to put in the show notes in the comment here. But what I'm most excited about right now is something called School. And so I set up a new school page. I'll share that link with you too. But it's going to have our 365 days of Bitcoin course in there. It's going to have our 21-day Bitcoin journey course. It's going to have our proof of work series in there and our generational wealth. I'm going to put all those in there for, I think it's going to be like $21 a month. It's live right now. I had somebody join. I didn't even have anything on the page yet, but really good value. The 365 days of Bitcoin. If you're somebody who's serious about learning, you want to be very well-rounded in terms of security, private key management, UTXO stuff, managing, ways to think about it, ways to save, ways to create funds, all these different things. Joey's going through it. It's just it's everything that you could imagine around Bitcoin, just put into like a 10-minute video every day. And so it just gives you the knowledge of a very well-rounded knowledge of Bitcoin. So that's the 365. We're on day 172, I think, today. So every day for 2025, I've made a 10 or 15-minute video about Bitcoin, and it's consumed my life much more than I had anticipated. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's awesome. You obviously care about it and you rock up regardless of what's going on. It sounds like you've had a pretty chaotic sort of first 6 months of the year. And so you still rock up, pump out the videos and help people when you can. So I think we all appreciate it. Yeah, it's been a pleasure having you on, man. Like, this has been awesome. I love talking to other Bitcoiners. And sometimes I feel like I'm Truman in the Truman Show, but you guys remind me that I'm not. We're actually outside of the Truman Show, walking around the barrier. So, it's awesome. Thanks for coming on, man. Hopefully we can do this again soon. And everyone go check out 88 Sats Radio.
Yes, sir. And thank you. I want to say a big thank you to you because you're doing a heck of a job here, man. You've been very consistent. I've been in your shoes before where it seems like no matter what you do and how much work you put into it, you never really get further ahead. But that's usually where people quit. And right on the other side of that is kind of what I talked about in terms of it seems like you can't get it started. And then all of a sudden it seems like you can't stop it. So just keep going. You're doing Satoshi's work, we'll say here. And more people need to be talking about this stuff because it is the most important, the most interesting thing that has happened, I think, in human history. So good on you for doing what you're doing. Keep hustling, keep grinding, keep converting those fiat dollars into sats. And I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Cheers, Joe. See you, everyone. Bye.
Cheers, buddy.